streaming live?
Just about to. Yep.
Go ahead.
Up and running.
Up and running. Hello, fellow W.A.P.O. Hello, WPM. Hello, friends. Hello, everyone. My name is Angela Marie Colon. I am one of the founding 4 members of Wilmington Advocacy and Protest Organization. We come to you today to try and make something right. Advocates, friends, citizens. This movement is dying. News from Seattle tells of Chaz and Chop, Capitol Hill's occupied protest and autonomous zone, has been taken down. According to the New York Times, on Wednesday, a resolution took the form of squads of riot police and several pieces of heavy machinery. The police swept through the so-called Capitol Hill organized protest area in the early morning hours with little opposition, pulling aside barricades, arresting protesters, and retaking the police station they had abandoned several weeks earlier. The fires of our revolution that were once burning like beacons, beckoning us to rise against the fist of our oppressors, has begun to smolder under the paranoid suspicions of hijacking and rising criticisms calling for peaceful protests. Here in Wilmington, nearly every morning I am greeted by empty City Hall steps and well-meaning but aimless people with all the passion but none of the direction, shuffling around in the heat of the noonday sun. Friends, this movement is dying. And what do we have as a nation to show for it? Well, they're looking at a bill that makes it not okay to lynch people, so that's a thing. Oh, but it still has to pass the Senate. And well, the Justice and Policing Act also still has yet to go through the Senate. That stops things like chokeholds, by the way. Meanwhile, across the states, governments are scrambling to come up with sporadic reform measures of their own to varying degrees of success and thoroughness. And here, what do we have to show for our efforts? They gave one of the cops a raise and temporarily removed some statues, which they can still put back at any time they feel we're done out here being hostile. They still haven't mentioned addendums to the budget. They still haven't addressed that the programs the WPD have in place are not sufficient in accordance to the demands. They still haven't charged those 3 officers with anything and refuse to give us information on other officers who have culpable strikes on their files. I've spoken enough about the significance of false solutions and placating placebo policies for you to understand what I mean when I ask this. Friends, what do we have? Nothing. Ladies and gentlemen, we are failing. We are failing because we came half-cocked, half-assed, and half-willing to a fight that requires us to give it our all. Because we allowed our vitriol to be dampened by condescending voices that cringed at the sound of curse words, at the sight of plastic Confederate flags burning, at people sitting on an empty street or blocking traffic for a few minutes every evening. We bought into the idea that peaceful protesters were better than the violent rioters, and that we've been sitting here playing hula hoops and patty cake with bubbles and signs on the steps of City Hall ever since. We have forgotten that there is a balance that needs to be maintained. That disruption is a part of this process. That disruption is not violence. We are failing because we are not informed enough. On Monday, I asked people whose faces I've seen here every week what the 7 demands were, and I was met with blank faces. Advocates, we are a joke in the eyes of officials. District Attorney Ben David stood here smug as hell, patronizingly confident even, because he wasn't scared of a single one of you. He didn't have to be. There was nobody here who was equipped enough to challenge him in his legal arena, and he knew it. I'm not saying you need to become an expert in the law, that you need to cram years of education into a few days. I don't need you to become an expert. What we need you to do, however, is to become informed enough so you understand what's going on. So when cops try to give you a citation for abusive language, you realize and inform them that they just tried to call up a law that the Supreme Court ruled unconstitutional back in 2010. Arm yourselves with knowledge, my friends. Why have the cops stopped watching us? To give us space? To save some of that money? I mean, they did spend quite a bit on that propaganda Twitter video and on guarding a few statues for a few days there. Money must be tight. Maybe that's why they can't be bothered to show up anymore unless it's to annoy us away with petty citations for petty acts. At this point, we are a nuisance, nothing more. And while being a nuisance is well and fine, it is a terribly ineffective way to make a statement if it is all we are doing. Tell me something. Why are you here? Why are you here? And why are you not here? Most of you want to help do what feels right, what is right, because Black Lives Matter. Yes, we know. Let me ask you this. How far does your loyalty extend to that idea? Are you willing to learn what the 7 demands are and see them through to completion? Are you willing to sweat in the heat of the sun, exhausted, holding up a sign for hours on end, to lose your voice from crying out? Are you willing to curse at some people? Are you willing to stand on some roads? Are you willing to break some laws? Are you willing to go to prison? Are you willing to have that strike against your record? No, think about it. Are you willing to potentially lose out on jobs, scholarships, and future prospects because of that charge? To lose your friends and family? Are you willing to die? I mean, coronavirus is still a thing, and you're out of here, so that means something, right? And I understand. Not everyone is a person of direct action. But I want you to understand that these are very real threats to people fighting this fight across the country right now. So these are things we need to ask ourselves and be honest with our answers. When you come to this fight, you come in understanding the risks you might face, but you also come forward understanding the reward. Freedom and justice for all. And I don't know about you, but if I can suffer so that so many more never have to again, if I can rattle some cages, if I can make enough noise so that no one else has to die and be left unaccounted for, then I, for one, am willing to make that sacrifice. So ask yourself, what am I willing to do? Find your hard and soft limits, but then do absolutely everything you can up to that point. Do the most you can do. Please. Your friends of color, your fellow advocates, we have been fighting too long on their own. We need you to bring your all allies. Fellow W.A.P.O founder Devin Scott, on that note, has also prepared some words for me to read to you. We know what you are willing to do, and we also need to know what you are willing to do, and we also need to know what you've done. What have you done up to this point to contribute to justice? What have you done up to this point to ensure a world of equality where people aren't killed because it's more convenient than arresting them? To ensure a world where human life is an externality of a corrupt system. A world where the same money that we put can go towards health and public safety isn't funneled into the departments designed to take those same rights away that the people had to march to receive by many municipal militias. Did you donate money to the cause? Raise your hand internally. Did you donate to the bail fund? The stopgag against a system that criminalizes your skin and zip code and then criminalizes the poverty they force you into by making you pay to get out of the jail you were put in for being poor or a minority in the first place. Did you donate to a local charity? To the organizations out here? To people out here who choose to protect life instead of making a living out of doing so? How much? How many times? But I understand. It's a recession. We just came out of a pandemic that closed down many of your jobs. Most of America is laid off, fired, or furloughed. You barely have money to spend on yourself. No worries. How many of you then honored the blackout movement, made certain to starve the city's businesses until they joined the cause? How many of you held back your scant few dollars and made it clear that you weren't spending money until the city's business owners were forced to demand reform from the city with us? How many of you before this moment even knew what the blackout movement was? Of course, you still need to purchase things, I understand. We can't live without food or water or keep warm without clothes. How many of you spent that money you did have on local black-owned businesses? How many minority-run businesses can you identify in this city? Did you patronize those businesses to help tip the scales of inequity back into the balance? Did you put money back into the richest white man in the world, Jeff Bezos' pockets, because Amazon is just too darn convenient? Or did you look up what you could find, what you needed locally? If you need those resources or links, we have them for you. It makes sense, though. Most businesses fail as it is, and we haven't had the same number of black-owned businesses since they were burned down and stolen in 1898. It's not easy to get everything you need locally or pay extra for it. I know, we're all struggling. But did you speak at City Hall? Are you signed up to bring the remaining 7 demands at the next meeting? Have you drafted a speech to tell our mayor and councilmen so they never go one session without having to look into the eyes of someone demanding justice, so that they know we didn't give up? How many of you are signed to speak at every session from here on out? Every session, so they don't tell us we're not using the right channels. The city's clerk's office is right here behind me in this building. You can sign up right now. But there are links online to do that as well, and if you need those, we've got you covered. But public speaking is listed as the #1 phobia in the world. It's not for everyone to get up and speak in front of authority, and it can be frightening. It helps to keep a certain level of distance to make your voices heard, understood. So how many of you have made a phone call to City Council then? How tied up are you keeping their phones ringing and their hearts racing with dread that the next call is asking about progress on that Citizens Review Board? How many of you called before coming to this protest? How many of you will call after I'm done speaking? Because I have the number now, right here in front of me if you want it. And yes, it's fair to note that not everyone communicates best through the spoken word. It's hard to memorize all those facts and demands, and it feels like it diminishes your message if you stutter. Of course, I understand that. So then how many letters did you send into the council? How many stamps did you devote to telling them that we, the people, demand recognition and change? How many letters did you write requesting hard numbers for how much they actually utilize their LEAD program and how much they truly support restorative justice over incarceration? How many words have you put to paper to the people that matter when it comes to policy change, what your demands are? How many letters have you sent? Have you run out of paper yet? Of envelopes? But that takes time and resources. You may not even have stamps or a printer or great handwriting. So how many emails did you send? How many times did you flood their inbox with our demands? Have you written in enough that they flag you as spam? Do you send in a letter every day instead of posting how much you support the cause on Facebook? Do you think council has memorized our 7 demands yet from how often they read your messages? Do you make it impossible for them to see what their morning duties are until they've read those emails? Disruption, my friends, comes in many forms. And that's not to diminish what you're doing. You are out here listening to this. That means to some level, you support the cause, like a good and safe, peaceful protester. So what about your friends? How many people have you convinced to come out here with you? How many friends and family have you confronted to ask them if they support Black lives, if they support equal justice? if they support building a system that actually protects and serves as it is meant to? Have you invited someone new every day, directly? Don't just assume they'll catch on. Give them a ride. How many people have you brought? Count that in your heads. Be honest. Advocates, citizens, and friends, we have to actively keep this growing. They are waiting for us to dwindle away and die off while they sit in their air-conditioned seats. But maybe we should get them out of those seats. How many of you are registered to vote? Raise your hands. Good. If you need to, we have registration forms right over there. How many of you know that your registration is up to date and matches your current address? Do you know what offices are up for re-election this year? How about next year? Have you tagged your elected officials on social media and sent them emails and letters and calls and speeches and chants telling them that you are voting them out, that their time is through, that their clock is ticking? Have you signed up for your absentee ballots and announced to the world that you're going to vote early? That you're not going to give the next 2020 crisis a chance to distract from the justice we have not yet received? And that you will make your choice for elected officials this month? Have you looked up your candidates for city, county, state, and congressional offices and asked them directly if they stand with us? Hell, have you asked them to come out here and physically stand with us? Tell them that you will make your choice in a matter of weeks. Don't give them time to campaign. See what they have to say right now before their writers make up some pretty marketable garbage for you to absorb, buy into. If you need absentee ballot deadlines or how to do that, again, we've got you. What if you can't find an official you approve of? What if there's absolutely no good politician running for that seat? Then run for that office. Find a good friend who will. We all have one. We all have that smart motherfucker. Run for that seat so that when the picket permit for this movement finally expires, we won't need it anymore. Run for that seat so that you can be the hand that signs our demands into policy, so that you can be the person to fight for justice. You don't feel qualified? That's fine. Neither are they. But if you can vote, you have the constitutional right to represent yourself like a politician. If you've been out here, then you could show up like a politician. If you have invited friends here, then you can campaign like a politician. If you have continually written social media posts and emails and letters and made calls, then you can articulate change to policy like a politician. If you have signed up to speak at city council, then you can conduct yourself at a podium like a politician. If you took the time to identify and patronize black businesses in Wilmington, then you can scrutinize and prioritize a budget like a politician. If you have been doing all of these things, then you are qualified to represent us, we the people in office. And if you have showed up every day, we already know your name and where you stand, because your name is we, and you stand with us. But if you haven't done these things, if you haven't qualified yourself for the position of leadership, to be the leader we need, then how can you expect our current leaders to? How can you expect them to make change if you can't convince yourself to give them the example? If you haven't done these things, these simple, direct things, then maybe, just maybe, our leaders do represent us, and we have been the problem all along. This may be the most impactful time for any of us to be the change we want to see in the world. Again, there are so many that have contributed so much already, and I don't take it lightly that you have, or that you're even listening to this. All of that work is lost, however, if this movement dies without leaving the mark it is intended to leave on our history. We aren't done. We can't be done. We can't be done. Microphone. There's still more work to do. These steps I mentioned can bring real change. They will hold our leaders accountable to us, the people. They will hold us accountable to the future we are working towards, to ourselves. If you're ready to continue this fight, to do what we need to do to keep this movement strong, please speak to me about these actions. Copy them, memorize them, do them every day, every week, every month, until and after these elections. The news calls to you, leaders. The news calls you, leaders. Show them that this wasn't a misprint. If you need information on anything I've spoken of today, you can find it on the Facebook page. On the Facebook page for W.A.P.O, Wilmington Advocacy and Protest Organization. You can find it through me, Angela Marie Colon. Reach out to me. You can find it on our website as well. Talk to us. We'll be here every Sunday from 12 noon to 4 p.m. Find us. Find us before then. Even before this, find it online, because that's where we're getting all this information. Once again, show them the leaders that you are, the leaders that we need you to be. We're in this together or not at all. Thank you for your time. We appreciate you.